Good morning. And again, I don't seem to have anybody online on the hour, but don't forget these will be recorded and you'll be able to pick them up later. This morning, as per email, I'm going to cover the unit of the qualification. As you know, this is only a 2-unit qualification. And the second unit is fairly straightforward. I'm going to run this lesson as far as it goes today because it may be able to cover it in just the one lesson, although there is one scheduled again for Friday. What I'll do is at the end of this lesson, if I've covered everything and nobody else has come on, I'll email you all later to make sure that you understand that and there'll be no further lesson on Friday. Okay, right, well, one of the things I want to cover first is that the part of Unit 1, one of the documents that I wanted to put in on there was to give you a view of an internal verification strategy. I'll put one up here, which I put together, and then we'll carry on with the rest of that that we did last time. The written document, it was in response that I did several strategies depending on the circumstances of the organisation that I was working with him. This was for let me say, a Central Lancashire college who had got into rather difficulties with verifier. And I was asked to go in to sort it out. But what I did find, they didn't have an internal verification strategy. And this was one of the reasons they'd been sanctioned by the awarding body. And it stopped them from making any more registrations or claiming any more certification until they got sorted out. Fortunately for the college, when the external verifier turned up, I actually knew him. So we managed to get the sanctions lifted, provided I provided him with a strategy for moving forward. The strategy for managing and sampling assessed awards will be determined by size to ensure reliability, number of the experienced and workload of the assessor, the number of different sites being worked, whether they've got rolling starts and finish dates or fixed ones, and it will be by examination of the assessment reports and feedback, observations for experienced assessors 2 per year, for new assessors 3 in the first 6 months, 2 in the second 6 months, and 3 in the following 12 months. Now, those were for that particular organisation because none of the assessors were particularly experienced. There were a couple that have been doing it for a while, but whether I would have declared them as experienced is another matter. So I said I'm 2 per year there, but with an experienced group of assessors, probably 1 a year will be sufficient for that. For new assessors, 3 in the first 6 months, 2 in the second 6 months, and then 3 in the following 12 months. So they've probably dropped that to 2 in different circumstances. These are quite heavy observations or quite a workload for the internal quality. The portfolios, there'll be at least 1 interim and 1 final internal verification. 1 control unit, core, sampled for all candidates to ensure standardization. Now this comes back to what we talked about before. Standardization is an important, a very important piece of the IQA's work. That is to make sure that the assessments across the qualification are fair. If you've got a number of assessors in a particular organisation assessing similar the same or similar qualifications, then not just the methods of assessment should be similar, I'm not saying they should be exact in every instance, because circumstances at the assessment site may be different. But it's a look at the standard that's being applied. The awarding body will say, most of the time there will be guidelines for assessors, and those guidelines, some assessors may adhere to them stringently. Others may say, oh, that doesn't matter, or this doesn't matter, and it's not, you're not getting the same reaction. This means that at some of these meetings, you need to have a practice. You'll take a unit on the qualification that the probably 2 or 3 assessors are actually assessing, and give them a student's work, exactly the same piece of student's work, and get them to assess it. And from the result, you'll know whether they are assessing at the same level standard. Yeah. It's very easy for an assessor, particularly on academic work, to put their interpretation onto. They may say, I don't think that's good enough. It's not got that in. Another assessor may look at it slightly differently and say, well, yeah, he's covered that, and he has referenced it, and he's done this, and say, well, okay, that'll do. It's to try and tighten that up to make sure there's fairness. In practical applications, the standard is much clearer. It will say, has to do this, this, and this, must apply that, that, and that. And it's very prescriptive, if you like, and it makes it certainly easier for the assessor, because he's either done it or he hasn't. It's as simple as that. Some of you will be able to understand this in the situation in which you work, where people are actually going to do something, they are going to produce something, at the end of the day, using equipment. So, yeah. The next bit is coming to the important part. All records must be kept in a centre file. Yeah. In other words, the centre must have an IQA file, and all the records and documentation that's completed for that must end up in that file. It must be kept at least electronically, but certainly I would recommend paper-based records as well. For the general, there isn't that many of them, so yeah, you can do that quite easily. The centre file will be produced because, again, they haven't got one, so they have to produce a centre file. Contain a list of assessors and their qualifications, experience, and any TPD that they were involved in. A list of registered candidates identifying the dates of registration. An overall sampling plan over a given period covering all registered candidates. An ongoing sampling plan for formative verification of portfolios. This is a number of, we're building paper-based portfolios, but the same applies on our VLA platform, our Moodle. Work can be actually deposited on there for assessment and feedback, and then returned and picked up again. Now, some of that is not happening at the moment with ours. I would like some of you to get your head around that and see that you can put your documentation onto there. It will notify me when there's documents there that need to be assessed, and I can pick those up, deal with them, give you feedback, and send them back very quickly. An ongoing sampling plan for summative verification of portfolio and submitted assignments. And again, this will be the plan in ours. It's available electronically to do that. Copies of interim internal verified reports to assessors with any actions and feedback. So all these go in the centre file. Copies of final internal verified reports to assessors with any feedback and actions. If it's a final internal verified report, it shouldn't have any actions because there will obviously something need to be signed off. It may be something very small, like the assessor needs to get some signatures on something. Again, documentation has to be auditable. So consequently, when people have done things, completed things, they need to be signed and dated by both the candidate and the assessor. But again, you've got an auditable document. Any actions to be cleared and recorded before the external verifier is presumed. Now again, the terminology has changed. Of course, this will be EQA and IQA, not internal and external verifier. Doesn't mean any difference. It's exactly the same job, but in terms of IQA, it goes a little further than this, as I will explain later. All records of any claim certification to be kept on file. Now again, this is done electronically and will automatically be kept onto our set of file. Right, now this was for specific things, and again it can be done within the confines of a specific qualification. We will work towards a standard portfolio for these awards, determining who will contain and what order they will appear. Now, I mentioned this at the last lesson. If you are building your own portfolio electronically, then it makes sense to start with Unit 1. Well, you can start with your declaration form that this is your work, then Unit 1, Unit 2, 3, 4, and then numerical order up to this one, which is 2 in this case. There's only 1 and 2, but where you've got some of you are on the on the teaching and learning qualification at level 5. That's got 9 units. Therefore, again, you would have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then whatever unit you would have down to, I think the last one's 39 on that qualification. So you would have not 39 units, obviously, but unit 39 will be the last one in your electronic portfolio. Yeah. All new assessors to receive an adequate induction into all processes, followed by close support. There's a word in there, adequate. It's who deems it adequate. Well, in this case, it's you, the IQA. Yeah. If you think an assessor is now capable of working on their own, and you know the people, you're working with them on a daily basis, are they capable of working alone with some support, or do they still need to have further training? The induction process needs to cover everything, all the documentation, and everything that goes with it. All assessors will need to have copies of all the centre assessment materials. I put TBA on there because a lot of it was missing and we had to put it in later. Copies of internal verification documents. We didn't have any. Again, this was why they got into a problem, and we had to draft or use internal verification documents that I already have for all organisations, and recopied those with their lower one. Copies of the standards for each award assessed. Now that is very important. One of the things that the candidate should have, is a copy of the standards they're working towards. Yeah? So those are all available to you. And every part on the middle, it says this unit does this or unit does that. I've also, if you remember, I'll come back to it shortly, put suggested evidence forms on that sheet, where it says what is required, and I put, well, to do that, you need to do this. So that sheet will bring up again shortly. And they must have access to training and support. All portfolios, either hard copy or electrical, presented for internal verification, shall have secure storage, be logged in and out, and cleared within 3 weeks. Now that's for paper-based ones. As I've said, the way of depositing your work in our PLA system is almost straightforward than that, and it doesn't require you know, the same time frame. It should be within 3 weeks, and in most cases it may be less than that for electric ones, provided they're put in periodically and not literally you've got a pile of units and send them all at once, and then it's going to take the assessor quite some time to go through that process of documents and then supply them to the IQA, who then has to go through the work to make sure it's all covered and he's happy with it or is happy with the work, which will come to shortly. And that creates backlogs. So periodic assessment of work and internal verification of it, be able to keep it well within 3 weeks. In fact, some of them could be returned if it's only a short document or a part of it, it can be covered in a few days. So this strategy has 3 strands: sample assessment methods, monitor the assessment practice, and standardise the assessment judgment. And those 3 strands really go through the whole of IQA. And it's all about managing the documentation process to make sure that everything's covered. On the bottom, when new assessors join the team, I will propose standardisation meetings on a quarterly schedule. This was because, again, at this place, there were going to be a number of new assessors and probably only 2 or 3 with any sort of experience. So those quarterly schedules were adhered to. In your IQA plan, which this is, strategy, you can put that in. You don't necessarily have to keep to that, provided you record why you haven't. That's it. And again, this strategy is, and this should be on the end of any strategy, because no strategy lasts forever. Things change, people change, circumstances change. So this strategy is a working document and may be amended from time to time to comply with recommendations from the external verifier or college quality team. Numbered and amended copies must be put in force and previous versions destroyed. Now that is very important. As we've said, this is an auditable, or these documents that we're talking about are auditable documents. Now, I'll give you a really good example. I was originally a mechanical engineer. When a new job was being built, they would supply drawings, obviously, for the fitters and tradesmen to build the job with. Periodically, it may be that, when I worked on the tools, we would find an error on the drawing. In other words, it may be we found that actually couldn't do that, or this pipe couldn't go through that plate, or whatever. So that what would happen was a new drawing, or with a modification, would be put out. It was imperative that all copies of the original drawing were destroyed, because if somebody picked up the wrong drawing and built it to the other standard again, it wouldn't meet. It can be quite costly. In this case, the costs are not as great, but it's important that any documentation that is changed needs to be kept as the document, and any previous documents destroyed. So that is an internal verification or IQA strategy. Yeah, it's how it would look, and your school or college should have one, because if not, the external or EQA might not be happy. So yeah, that is an important document. Goes up. I'm going to leave another couple of things now. We didn't quite finish the QA presentation on there. I'll just finish the last few. Because the first, what I've just been talking about, I'll cover the last few again now. It goes from actually starts with to the process, I think. Yeah, this one will go to. Can't move this. Oh, yeah. Try this. No. Okay, depending on the subject you will internally verify. I can read this. No, never mind. Your internal policy, you will usually follow the internal policy assurance cycle, which we mentioned last time. It was the plan what you're doing, do it, look at what you've done, and then you follow the cycle again. Cycle will continue to ensure that the assessment process is constantly monitored and improved where necessary. Records of all activities must be maintained throughout to satisfy your organisation, the regulating authorities, and, more than anything, the awarding bodies. Identify the again. Oh, stop. And monitoring is identify product, service, or whatever, ascertaining what is going to be assessed and why. For example, our learner is working towards a qualification. Our staff being observed performing the job roles. The criteria will need to be clear, i.e. units from a qualification, learning objectives or aspects of a job specification. Learners should be allocated to assessors in a fair way. For example, according to location, experience, or workload. That's an important fact. If you overload an assessor, it can create real problems. Most people take on work when they're asked to, without giving it too much thought. For NVQ assessors, which I was mainly involved with, the optimum number, really the maximum number, is 40. That's 40 students. Now it's a lot, and if the assessor is actually travelling out to companies to assess those people in their workplace, the travelling time from place to place, I suppose, as well as keeping all the records and documentation. So yeah, 40 could even be way too high for some qualifications. It depends on the qualification and the circumstances. Yeah. So the learners should be allocated to assessors in a fair way. Technically, it's in colleges and schools, it's section managers that actually do that. But this is where the change from internal verifier to IQA comes in. The IQA is much more involved with the management of the process right away, and managers might not be in as the position as the IQA to determine assessor workloads and what they've got to do. So it should be probably a discussion between those as to how to set up and allocate the number of registered students to the assessors. So, key concepts of IQA are accountability, assessment strategies, risk factors, evaluation, interim and summative sampling, and that should be no more, transparency, and having a rationale. The rationale and strategy pretty much the same thing. But the last bit is being accountable to your organisation and any external bodies. And that is, again, another important point. Accountable obviously to your organisation, but you are the link between your organisation and those external bodies. And it's important that the relationship is good. There can be difficulties arise with external quality assurers without too much trouble. So it's important that the external quality assurer is kept happy and informed by the IQA of what's happening within the organisation. The slides you've just seen are the basis on which to build your responses to the various questions posed in each element of the unit. Your answers may differ slightly according to practice and policies within your school or college in which you work. IQA has a central role in the way the organisation operates. It is important to remember then that the importance of maintaining records, both hard copy and electronic. You're also the main link between your college and the awarding bodies, which I've just said. Your relationship with them becomes more important if your organisation is small. That body or bodies will be a solid source of support for your role. EQAs answer any questions you have and help to advise you on questions within your own school or college with regard to the delivery and assessment of the qualification. That is important to remember, that they are a constant supply of support. That's what they're there for. It's not in their interests not to do that. You are delivering their qualifications. So, track to evidence for your portfolio. Your evidence for this award is made up of examples of the documents you use within your school or college. These will be explained by a narrative of their purpose and how they are used, further supported by copies of your school's policy procedures where relevant. Now, I put that in at the end because it actually matches the last bit of what we want to do now. I'll find it here. I'm going to open that. Here we are. Long time, but never mind. Now, this unit was going to use quite a few of the documents from, but the first one was understanding all the principles of how IQA works. This is putting it into practice. So it's asking you to do a number of things. Learning objective 1 is be able to plan the quality assurance or assessment. So it's plan, monitor and activities. This is your assessment plan when students are going to be assessed. Yeah. So plan, monitoring activities according to the requirements of your own role. In academic assessment and internal verification, the emphasis now is on formative assessment. You'll notice at the top of here it will say achieved or not achieved, not yet achieved. Now that is by, you can produce script of work that you're going to send in, you send it in, it gets assessed, it goes back again, right? That will happen several times before the IQA says, I can have a look at some of those now. There's a number of documents together. Some you've passed, some are still not yet achieved. And I'll do those. And yeah, okay, that's fine. Or I may find something that I'm not happy with, and I'll discuss that with the assessor via a report. It may be, as I've said before, that I've made a mistake and made something, and the assessor will come back and say, no, I've covered that there, and I'll go, oh, so you have, and they'll close that out. So it must be, if you make a comment as IQA, or want to see something or something you're not happy with, once it's been explained and it's satisfied, then you need to close that out and say that that is now sorted. Make arrangements for internal monitoring activities and to assure quality. So again, copies of any sampling plans, copies of internal monitoring and correspondence, will make sure that those are covered there. Yeah. If you're going to do an IQA on some work, then the assessors need to know about it so that they can make sure that work's available. And on a sampling plan, it's like, I think yesterday Raman issued some sample documents to you, just in case your school doesn't have one. It should. There's none of the documents that have been sent out to you should be from your centre files in the schools or colleges that you work. There are loads of samples that have been sent out. If you haven't got one, by all means use that sample or modify it to meet your needs. If you've got, obviously, your own documents within your own organisation that you use on a daily basis, use documents. Yeah. So copies of sampling plans, copies of internal monitoring correspondence. This is letting people know when it's going to occur. Carry out internal monitoring activities and quality assurance, copies of monitoring documentation. Yeah, that's really all that's done with this qualification. The next one is a little more difficult, or could be, I can understand it being a little more difficult. That's evaluate assessor expertise and competence in relation to the requirements of the role. One of the things that I can suggest is that you have, I've put in here, copies of assessor feedback with rationale. In other words, where you've actually advised an assessor on something or said that you need to do this or you need to do that. One of the reports, copies of the reports will do, but also, some people don't realise this now, but each assessor should have a training needs analysis done. I will put a document showing that and how that operates once I finish this lesson, and it will go on to the Moodle platform for you to look at. And basically what it does, it takes each assessor, looks at their experience, their knowledge, and everything that goes with it, and says, do they need further training? If the answer is no, that's fine, yeah? But it's recorded that at this point they can cover that, and at this stage no further training required. It will also highlight areas where assessors do need some further training or additional support to carry out their role. So, evaluate copies of assessor training needs analysis, experience, inexperience, etc. Evaluate the planning and preparation of assessment processes. Now, this could be just copies of the assessor feedback with reasons. Now, what it's asking for there is, were the assessments planned properly? Did they come in on a regular occasion, or a regular basis? Were they assessed as per the assessment agreement? Those are the things you need to look at on there. .4. Determine whether assessment methods are stage, that's a funny word, fair, valid, and reliable. So again, this is looking at assessment methods. And it says, like, copies of the accurate decisions and the reports. If the assessment processes can be carried out properly, fair, valid and reliable, then that will say so in the accurate decisions and reports. If an assessor is continually getting feedback from the accurate to say, I don't agree with your decision on this, or you need to look at that, or you need to look at the other, then obviously there's an alarm bell ringing that you should be looking at. And these can be covered, of course, in the standardization meetings. And that was looking at fairness, if you remember what I said, right across the board, so that you've got a fair and reliable assessment process. 2.5, determine whether the assessment decisions are made using specific criteria. Again, this is a copy of your accurate feedback. Again, it will say on the accurate board, were these assessed by using the criteria only. Well, I know that sounds stupid because you've got a set of criteria that you either are achieving them or you're not achieving them. But sometimes when it says specific, this can depend, especially on this type of qualification where you've got a lot of academic work. It was the command verb, that's the word we're looking for. The command verb's specific, and if it's not followed those command verbs, then obviously it's not meeting the specific criteria, and that will be in the feedback to the assessor on that process. It may be that the assessor picked that up and dealt with it, the IQA can then support that and say, yeah, I agree, it's not been done or it's not meeting the standard. And then compare decisions to ensure they are consistent. And this is again, it's dialogue, comparing assessor decisions and suggesting evidence. This is what I'm doing here. Okay. Right, we will need to go into second lesson on this, so that will be on Friday. What I will do again is this will be recorded and it will be available for you on the Moodle platform. With that, I will close the meeting and thank anybody for it.